My name is Brooke and I am 34 years old. I am standing outside my parents' house on Christmas Eve, holding an envelope that contains a secret I have kept for 7 years. The snow is falling softly, and through the window I can see my family gathered around the tree laughing at something my brother said. For most of my life, I was the invisible one in that room, the daughter they forgot to notice. But tonight everything is about to change. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt overlooked by the people who were supposed to love you most. Let me take you back to where it all began, and you will understand why this moment meant everything to me. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father, Gary, who is now 62, spent 35 years as a construction engineer before retiring. He was the kind of man who measured success by degrees and titles, by corner offices and prestigious awards. My mother, Diane, 59 years old, used to teach 3rd grade at the local elementary school. She had a gentle voice for her students, but somehow that gentleness rarely extended to me. Then there was my brother, Kevin. 3 years older, always 3 steps ahead in my parents' eyes. Kevin was the golden child, the one whose report cards got framed and hung on the refrigerator, the one whose sports trophies filled an entire shelf in the living room, while my art ribbons collected dust in a shoebox under my bed. Kevin married Meredith when he was 28. She came from old money, the kind of family that summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. Meredith had sharp cheekbones and even sharper opinions about people she considered beneath her. From the moment she met me, I could tell she thought I was exactly that. Beneath her, beneath Kevin, beneath everyone in that perfectly polished family portrait she was determined to create. Growing up in Kevin's shadow was like trying to grow flowers in permanent shade. No matter how hard I reached for the sunlight, he was always blocking it. I remember sitting at the dinner table when I was 10 years old, excited to share that I had won 2nd place in the school art competition. I had spent 3 weeks on that watercolor painting of our backyard oak tree. The leaves took me hours to get right, each one a slightly different shade of orange and gold. I cleared my throat and said, "Mom, Dad, I won a ribbon today." My art teacher said my painting was exceptional. My mother glanced at me briefly and said, "That is nice, honey." Then she turned to Kevin and asked, "So tell us more about the science fair. Did Mr. Henderson really say your project could go to regionals?" And just like that, my moment evaporated. My ribbon sat in my lap unseen while Kevin talked for 20 minutes about his volcano experiment. I learned early that in our house there was only room for one star, and that star would never be me. When I was 12, I made a birthday card for my mother. Not just any card. I spent an entire week designing it using every colored pencil I owned. The cover had a portrait I drew of her surrounded by roses and butterflies. Inside, I wrote a poem about how much she meant to me. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I gave her something special enough, she would finally see me. She opened it at the breakfast table on her birthday morning. I held my breath waiting for her reaction. She looked at it for maybe 3 seconds, said "Thank you, sweetie," and set it aside. For the rest of breakfast, she talked about how Kevin had called from his summer internship and was being considered for a leadership position. My father was even more direct about his expectations. He never hit me, never yelled at me. He simply spoke to me as if I were a mild disappointment he had learned to tolerate. I remember him sitting me down when I was 14, his hands folded on the kitchen table like he was delivering a business presentation. "Brooke," he said, "Kevin is going to be a doctor. He is going to make something of himself, make us proud. You are a pretty girl. You will find a nice husband someday who will take care of you. Just focus on being pleasant and let Kevin worry about the achievements." I did not cry in front of him. I saved that for later, face pressed into my pillow so no one would hear. I was 14 years old, and my own father had already written off my future. The difference in how they treated us showed up in 1,000 small ways. When Kevin needed a car for his senior year, my parents bought him a brand new pickup truck. When I turned 16 and asked about borrowing the family car occasionally, my mother said the insurance would be too expensive with a teenage girl driver. I rode my bike to my part-time job at the craft store all through high school rain or shine. Kevin grades were displayed on the refrigerator with pride. When I brought home a report card with straight A minuses, my mother said, "That is good, but your brother always got straight A's." When I made the honor roll 3 semesters in a row, nobody seemed to notice. When Kevin got accepted to medical school, my parents threw a party for 50 people. They rented out the back room of the nicest restaurant in Columbus and gave speeches about how proud they were. When I got accepted to the Columbus College of Art and Design with a partial scholarship for my portfolio, my mother said over dinner, "Well, that is nice, Brooke, but art is not really a career. Maybe you could get a teaching degree as a backup?" A backup. That is what I was in their eyes. The backup child. The summer before college, I had one last hope that maybe things would change. I had been working at the craft store for 2 years, saving every penny. I was terrified about leaving home, about starting somewhere new where I knew nobody. I thought maybe my parents would want to help me move in, would want to see my dorm room, meet my roommate, be part of this new chapter. I asked them over dinner one night. "Mom-Dad move-in day is August 23rd. I was hoping you could both come help me get settled. Maybe we could grab lunch after." My mother looked at my father. My father shook his head slightly. "Oh, honey, my mother said Kevin has his white coat ceremony that weekend. We promised we would be there. You understand, right? It is such an important milestone for him. My white coat ceremony is in 4 years." Kevin said, not even looking up from his phone. "It is not like I asked them to come to every single thing." But my parents had already made up their minds. Kevin needed them. Kevin always needed them. And I was expected to understand. So on August 23rd, I loaded up my beat-up Honda Civic with everything I owned. 2 suitcases, a box of art supplies, a mini fridge I bought used from Craigslist. I drove 4 hours to Columbus by myself, crying for the first hour straight. When I pulled into the parking lot of my new dorm, I watched other freshmen with their families. Dads carrying heavy boxes, moms fussing over bed placement, siblings taking pictures. I carried everything up 3 flights of stairs alone. It took 6 trips. My roommate asked where my family was, and I told her they had a prior commitment. I did not mention that the prior commitment was my brother existing. That night, after my roommate fell asleep, I walked to the bathroom at the end of the hall. I sat on the cold tile floor of a shower stall and cried until I had nothing left. Not because I missed home. I cried because I realized that home had never really been mine. I was 18 years old, completely alone, and for the first time in my life, that loneliness felt like the honest truth of my existence. The Columbus College of Art and Design became the first place I ever felt seen. The campus was small but vibrant, filled with people who thought like me, who saw the world in colors and shapes and possibilities. For the first time in my life, being creative was not something to apologize for. It was celebrated. I declared my major in graphic design, but I quickly became fascinated with something called UI/UX design, user interface and user experience. The idea that you could design not just how something looked, but how it felt to use it. That you could make technology more human. That combination of art and psychology and problem solving lit something up inside me that I had never felt before. But passion does not pay rent. I needed money, and my scholarship only covered about 40% of my tuition. So I did what I had to do. I worked 3 jobs. Every morning at 5:30, I walked to a coffee shop called Morning Grounds, 2 blocks from campus. I made lattes and cappuccinos and smiled at customers until my face hurt. My shift ended at 9, just in time to run to my first class. In the afternoons between 2 and 6, I worked as a library assistant shelving books and helping students find resources for their projects. And at night, from 8 until midnight or later, I did freelance design work on my laptop. Logos for local businesses, social media graphics for influencers, trying to make it big wedding invitations for couples who found me on Craigslist. I slept maybe 5 hours a night. sometimes less. I survived on coffee and determination, and the desperate knowledge that failure was not an option. There was no safety net waiting for me back home. No parents who would welcome me back if I dropped out. I was on my own, and I had to make this work. I called home every Sunday evening. It became a ritual, though not a pleasant one. The calls lasted maybe 10 minutes. My mother would answer, ask how classes were going, and before I could finish my response, she would start talking about Kevin. Kevin finished his first year of medical school at the top of his class. Kevin started seeing a lovely girl named Meredith, whose father is a judge. Kevin is so busy, but he still makes time to call us every day. I stopped trying to share details about my life. What was the point? When I mentioned my UI/UX class, my mother said, "That is nice, sweetie. Is that like making websites?" When I told her I was working 3 jobs, she said, "Well, at least it keeps you busy. Kevin always says idle hands make trouble." The conversations left me feeling hollow, like I was talking to strangers who happened to know my name. Then in my junior year, everything changed. I took a class called Advanced Digital Experience Design, taught by Professor Patricia Holloway. She was 58 years old. With silver hair she wore in a neat bun, and reading glasses that hung from a chain around her neck. But do not let the grandmother aesthetic fool you. This woman was legendary. She had spent 20 years as a creative director at major tech companies. She had designed interfaces used by millions of people. And somehow, after all that success, she had decided to spend her retirement teaching at a small art college in Ohio. I was terrified of her. Everyone was. She had a reputation for being brutally honest. Students came out of her critiques in tears. She did not give compliments easily, and when she criticized your work, she made you feel every missed opportunity. 3 weeks into the semester, we had our first major project review. We had to redesign the checkout experience for an existing retail website. I had spent 40 hours on my project, more than I spent on any assignment before. I had tested it with real users, documented every decision, prepared for every possible question. When it was my turn, I walked to the front of the room on shaking legs. I presented my work for 15 minutes. Professor Holloway sat in the front row, face unreadable scribbling notes. When I finished, there was silence. Then she stood up. "This is the first genuinely thoughtful project I have seen in 3 years," she said. I thought I misheard her. She continued, "Brooke, you have something rare. You understand how people think how they feel when they interact with technology. That is not something I can teach. That is a gift." I do not remember walking back to my seat. I do not remember the rest of the class. All I remember is floating through the rest of the day feeling like someone had finally turned on a light in a room I had been stumbling through in darkness. Professor Holloway became my mentor. She met with me weekly in her cluttered office filled with design books and vintage Apple products she collected. She pushed me harder than anyone ever had, but she also believed in me. She saw potential where everyone else saw a quiet girl who stayed in the background. During one of our meetings in my senior year, I showed her a problem I had been thinking about. Small businesses struggled to create professional websites. The existing tools were either too expensive or too complicated. I had sketched out an idea for a platform that would make it simple. Really simple. Something even my aunt, who still printed out emails, could use. Professor Holloway looked at my sketches for a long time. "This is not just a class project," she said finally. "This is a company." I laughed nervously. "I do not know anything about starting a company." "Then learn," she said. "You figured out 3 jobs and a full course load. You can figure out this too." That conversation planted a seed that would change everything. But I did not know that yet. At the time, I was just a tired college senior trying to survive until graduation. Graduation day came in May. I walked across the stage to receive my diploma summa cum laude, the highest honors in my class. I had worked so hard for that moment. 4 years of exhaustion and determination, 4 years of proving that I was more than a backup plan. My parents came. They sat in the audience somewhere, though I could not pick them out in the crowd. After the ceremony, I found them near the refreshment table. My mother was on the phone. My father was checking his watch. Congratulations, my mother said, putting her hand over the phone speaker. Kevin sends his love. He could not get away from the hospital, but he says he is proud of you. She did not say she was proud of me. Neither did my father. We should head out, my father said, looking at his watch again. Kevin and Meredith are coming for dinner tonight, and your mother needs to start cooking. That was it. No celebration, no acknowledgement of everything I had accomplished. Just a brief appearance before rushing home to prepare for the golden child. I stood in the parking lot and watched their car drive away. My roommate found me there 20 minutes later, still standing in the same spot. "Where is your family?" she asked. "They had somewhere to be," I said. She linked her arm through mine. "Come on, let us get pizza. My treat." I ate dinner that night at a cheap pizza place near campus, surrounded by other graduates and their families. Everyone was celebrating, laughing, taking pictures. I smiled and laughed along, but inside I was making a decision. I was done waiting for my family to see me. I was going to build something so big, so successful, so undeniable, that they would have no choice but to notice. And then maybe, just maybe, they would understand what they had missed. 2 weeks after graduation, I packed everything I owned into my Honda Civic again. But this time, I was not crying. I was driving 12 hours south to Austin, Texas, with a business plan scribbled in a notebook and $8,000 in savings. I called my parents from a rest stop in Arkansas to tell them my plan. My father laughed. Not a mean laugh, just a dismissive one. Startups, Brooke, that is for people with business degrees, people with connections, not art students. Find a real job with benefits, something stable. I will call you when I get settled, I said. I love you. Love you too, he said, already distracted by something. I hung up and drove the rest of the way in silence. I did not need their blessing. I never had it anyway. Austin welcomed me with open arms and brutal heat. I arrived in late June when the temperature was pushing 105 degrees. My apartment was a 400-square-foot studio on the east side of town above a taco shop that blasted music. Until 2 a.m. The kitchen was barely a kitchen, just a hot plate, a mini fridge, and a sink that dripped constantly. The air conditioning unit wheezed like it was dying. But the rent was cheap, and cheap was all I could afford. Those first 6 months nearly broke me. I lived on ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and free samples from the grocery store. I showered at the gym down the street, where I had a $20 a month membership. I worked 16, sometimes 18 hours a day, teaching myself everything I did not learn in art school. How to write code, how to structure a database, how to pitch to investors, how to file business paperwork. I set up my laptop on a folding table I bought for $12 at a thrift store. That table became my office, my dining room, and sometimes my pillow when I fell asleep in the middle of working. The screen of my laptop was my entire world. Building the platform was the hardest thing I had ever done. Every time I solved one problem, 3 more appeared. I would spend a week on a feature only to realize it was completely wrong and have to start over. I questioned myself constantly. Who was I to think I could build a tech company? I had no connections in Silicon Valley. I did not have a Stanford degree or a wealthy family to fund my mistakes. I was just a girl from Ohio who was good at making things look pretty. But pretty was not enough. I needed functionality. I needed scale. I needed code. I learned to code through YouTube tutorials and free online courses. I spent entire nights watching videos and practicing making mistakes and fixing them, failing and failing and failing, until suddenly something would work. Those small victories kept me going. A button that clicked, a page that loaded, a form that saved data correctly. Each one felt like proof that maybe, just maybe, I could do this. In my 4th month in Austin, I went to a startup meetup at a bar downtown. I almost did not go. I was exhausted and broke, and convinced that everyone there would see through me immediately. But I forced myself to put on clean clothes and show up. That was the night I met Marcus Thompson. Marcus was 29 years old, a software developer who had worked at a couple of tech companies before burning out on corporate politics. He was tall with wire-rimmed glasses and a laugh that seemed too big for his slender frame. He found me standing alone by the bar clutching a ginger ale because I could not afford a real drink. "You look like you are about to run out of here," he said. "Is it that obvious?" He smiled. I had the same look my first time. "What are you working on?" I told him about my idea, a platform that made website building simple for small businesses. No coding required, beautiful templates, easy customization, affordable pricing. Marcus listened without interrupting, which I would learn was rare for him. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "That is actually a really good idea," he said. "Most of the pitches I hear at these things are terrible." "Yours is not terrible." "High praise," I said, managing to smile. "I am serious. The market is there. The need is there. You just need someone who can build it faster than you can teach yourself." He paused. "I might know someone." "Who, me?" That was how my co-founder joined the company. Marcus agreed to work for almost nothing, just equity, and the promise that we would share the profits if we ever made any. He moved into my tiny apartment, sleeping on an air mattress in the corner, while we worked side by side on the platform. We ate together, coded together, argued together, and dreamed together. We called the company Design Flow. 18 months later, we launched. The platform lets small business owners create professional websites in hours instead of weeks. We had 20 templates to start, all designed by me. We had a drag and drop editor that Marcus built from scratch. We had a pricing model that was 50% cheaper than our competitors. Our first month, we had 100 customers. I remember staring at that number on my screen, unable to believe it was real. 100 people had trusted us with their businesses. 100 people had chosen Design Flow. By month 3, we had 500. By month 6, over 1,000. That first Christmas after launching, I went home to Ohio. I was so excited to share what we had built. I thought maybe finally my family would understand. We gathered around the dining table. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, the usual spread. I waited for a pause in the conversation, then said, "I have some news. My company just passed 1,000 customers. We are growing really fast." Kevin looked up from his plate. "A website builder? There are already thousands of those." His tone was not cruel, just dismissive. Like I had told him I learned to juggle. "That is nice, Brooke, but when are you going to get a real job? Something with benefits, a retirement plan?" Meredith laughed, a high tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. My cousin tried a startup once, lost everything, had to move back with his parents at 30. She looked at me with something like pity. "I hope you have a backup plan." I looked at my parents, waiting for them to defend me, to say something supportive, anything. My mother took a sip of wine. "Kevin, tell us more about that patient you saved last month." And just like that, I disappeared again. I sat there for the rest of dinner, smiling when I was supposed to smile, laughing when I was supposed to laugh. Inside, something hardened. On the drive back to Austin, I made a decision. I would stop sharing my work with my family. What was the point? They did not care. They never would. From now on, when they asked about my life, I would give them nothing. "Things are fine," I would say. "Work is busy." Let them think I was failing. Let them think I was struggling. I did not need their approval anymore. I had Marcus. I had my team. I had a company that was growing faster than I could have imagined. That was all the family I needed. By year 2, Design Flow had 5,000 paying customers. I hired my first employees, 5 young designers and developers who believed in what we were building. We moved out of my apartment and into a small office space on the east side of Austin. It was not much, just a converted warehouse with exposed brick and terrible heating, but it was ours. I still lived frugally. While other startup founders bought expensive cars and fancy apartments, I stayed in my little studio above the taco shop. Every dollar of profit went back into the company. New features, new hires, better servers. I did not need luxury. I needed growth. Every few weeks, my mother would call. The conversations followed the same script. How are you, honey? I am good, Mom. Work is busy. Are you still doing that computer thing? Yes, still doing that. Well, Kevin just published a paper in a medical journal, and Meredith made partner at her firm. Can you believe it? She is only 32. That is great, Mom. Tell them congratulations. I would hang up feeling empty. Not angry anymore, just empty. Like trying to draw water from a well that had been dry for years. The milestones kept coming, and my family kept missing them. When DesignFlow hit 10,000 customers, I did not call home. When we moved to a bigger office, I did not mention it. When a tech magazine wrote a feature about our innovative approach to web design, I did not send the link. What was the point? My 30th birthday came on a cold February day. I decided to throw myself a party. Nothing huge, just dinner at my favorite restaurant with my team. I had never had a birthday party before. Not really. Growing up, my birthdays always seemed to coincide with something more important. Kevin exams, Kevin games, Kevin achievements. I invited my parents, flew them first-class tickets, booked them a nice hotel. I thought maybe for my 30th, they would make an exception. My mother called 3 days before. Honey, I am so sorry. Kevin is getting an award from the hospital that weekend. He is the youngest doctor ever to receive it. You understand, right? We cannot miss that. I understood perfectly. I celebrated my birthday anyway. My team surprised me with a cake shaped like a computer monitor with DesignFlow on the screen. Marcus gave a toast about how proud he was of what we built together. One of my designers, a 25-year-old woman named Jasmine, who reminded me of myself at that age, gave me a card that said, "Thank you for giving me a chance when no one else would." I cried that night. Not sad tears. Something more complicated. I had built a family of my own, a family that chose me. That was worth more than any award. Thanksgiving that year, I went home with expensive gifts for everyone. Cashmere sweaters, vintage wine, a designer handbag for Meredith that cost more than my first month rent in Austin. I thought maybe generosity would open a door. We sat around the table, turkey stuffing cranberry sauce. Kevin talked about his patients. Meredith talked about her cases. Emma, their daughter, was just learning to walk, and everyone fawned over her first steps. I sat at the corner of the table watching. At one point, I realized that no one had asked me a single question in 2 hours. Not about my work, not about my life, not about whether I was seeing anyone. Nothing. I started counting. I spent the rest of that dinner keeping track. 0 questions for Brooke, 17 questions for Kevin, 12 observations about how smart Emma was. The numbers told a story my heart already knew. Year 4 brought the first big recognition. Forbes magazine was doing a feature on up-and-coming tech entrepreneurs. Someone at the magazine used DesignFlow and loved it. They reached out for an interview. When the issue came out, I was on the cover. The headline read, "The Quiet Revolutionary, Changing How Small Businesses Build Online." The article talked about my journey, my vision, the growth of the company. 200,000 customers by then, $50 million in annual revenue, $15 million in profit. I looked at that cover and felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. This was the recognition I had wanted my whole life, but the people I wanted it from would never see it. I did not send the magazine to my family. What would be the point? They would find a way to make it about Kevin somehow. By year 5, the acquisition offers started coming. Big tech companies wanted to buy DesignFlow. We had something special, something they could not build themselves. Our platform was not just functional, it was beautiful. Users loved it in a way they did not love our competitors. That was my contribution. That was what I brought to the table. The understanding that technology should feel human. I turned them all down. Not yet, I told Marcus. We are not done building. But the calls kept coming. 20 million, 50 million, 80 million. I started to realize that everything I had built was worth something. Real money. Life-changing money. The kind of money that makes people notice you. Around this time, Kevin started calling more often. Not to check on me, to ask for stock tips. I heard tech people make good money, he said on one call. Maybe you could help me invest in some startups. You know that world. I wanted to laugh. For years, he had dismissed my work. Now he wanted my advice. I do not really follow the market, I said. Sorry. Meredith started texting too. Professional inquiries about investment opportunities from her lawyer friends. I deleted them without responding. They still did not know how successful I had become, and I intended to keep it that way. For now. The offer came in October. $170 million. A tech conglomerate that wanted to integrate DesignFlow into their ecosystem. They would keep the brand, keep the team, keep Marcus as CEO. They just wanted to buy me out. I spent 3 months thinking about it. Talking to Marcus, talking to my team, talking to Professor Holloway, who I still called every few weeks. It is your decision, she said. But ask yourself this. Are you holding on because the work still excites you? Or because you are afraid of who you will be without it? That question kept me up at night. The truth was, I was tired. 7 years of 18-hour days. 7 years of carrying every problem on my shoulders. 7 years of building something from nothing. I had proven what I needed to prove. To myself, if no one else. And there was something else. The idea of having enough money to never worry again. To never feel that desperate hunger that drove me for so long. To be able to help others the way no one helped me. In November, I told the buyers I was ready to negotiate. But I had conditions. Keep the team for at least 2 years. Full benefits, no layoffs. Marcus gets a leadership position and equity in the new structure. These people believed in me when I was sleeping on an air mattress and eating ramen. I was not going to abandon them. The negotiations took 6 weeks. Lawyers, accountants, endless conference calls. I learned more about corporate law than I ever wanted to know. On December 15th, we signed the papers. The deal was done. After taxes, I walked away with about $110 million. I sat in my empty office that night, the same office where I had built something from nothing. The desks were quiet. The computers were dark. I looked out the window at the Austin skyline lights twinkling against the night sky. I had made it. Against every expectation, against every dismissal, against every moment when someone told me I was not enough. But the victory felt incomplete. There was one more thing I needed to do. I did not tell my family about the sale. I did not call my parents to share the news. I did not post on social media or do any press interviews. I wanted to see their faces when they found out. I wanted to watch their reactions in real time. I wanted them to understand what they had missed while they were busy looking the other way. Christmas was coming, and I was going home. I prepared carefully. I bought presents for everyone. Normal gifts, nothing extravagant. A sweater for my mother, a tie for my father, toys for Emma. Nothing that would raise suspicion. I prepared a manila envelope. Inside was a copy of the Wall Street Journal article announcing the acquisition. $170 million deal makes DesignFlow founder a quiet success story. My name was right there in the headline. I booked a room at the nicest hotel in Columbus, the presidential suite. I had earned it. As I packed my bag for the trip, I thought about what I was going to do. Was this revenge? I did not think so. I was not angry anymore. I had worked through that anger years ago. This was something else. This was closure. I wanted my family to see the person I had become. Not the invisible daughter, not the backup child, but Brooke. Founder, entrepreneur, millionaire. I wanted them to know what they had overlooked while they were too busy celebrating Kevin. And then whatever happened after that, I would be free. Christmas Eve. Snow was falling as my rental car pulled into my parents' driveway. The house looked the same as it always did. White lights strung along the roofline. A wreath on the door. The same artificial tree visible through the living room window, decorated with the same ornaments I remembered from childhood. I sat in the car for a moment, envelope in my purse, heart pounding. 7 years. 7 years of silence. 7 years of building something incredible, while my family pretended I barely existed. Tonight, that silence would end. I walked up the path and rang the doorbell. My mother answered, her face brightening into her standard greeting smile. "Brooke, honey. Come in, it is freezing out there." Inside the house smelled like roasting turkey and pine needles. Kevin and Meredith were already there sitting on the couch with 2-year-old Emma between them. My father was in his recliner watching a basketball game with the sound muted. "Hey, Brooke," Kevin said, barely looking up from his phone. "Good to see you." "You too," I said. Meredith glanced at my outfit, a simple cashmere dress I had bought for the occasion. "That is cute," she said in a tone that meant the opposite. Very understated. "Thanks," I said, sitting down in the chair furthest from the group. The evening unfolded the way every family gathering always had. My mother bustled around the kitchen. My father watched sports. Kevin and Meredith monopolized every conversation. Emma was displayed like a prize, her every gurgle and smile celebrated as evidence of genius. No one asked me a single question. At dinner, we gathered around the table. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce. The food I had grown up with, made by the mother who had never quite seen me. My father raised his glass. "A toast," he said, "to Kevin, the pride of our family, a brilliant surgeon who makes us proud every single day." Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too, but my smile did not reach my eyes. Kevin went on about his work. A complicated surgery he had performed, a paper he was publishing, a conference in Vienna he had been invited to speak at. Meredith mentioned her partnership at the law firm, her new corner office, the important client she had just landed. Through it all, I sat quietly, waiting. Finally, Meredith turned to me with that fake smile I had come to know so well. "So, Brooke," she said, "are you still doing that little website thing, making Etsy pages for craft stores or whatever?" Kevin snorted. "Have you found a boyfriend yet? You are not getting any younger." I set my fork down slowly. "Actually, I have some news I would like to share with everyone." The table went quiet. Even my father looked up from his turkey. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. I placed it on the table and slid it toward my father. "I sold my company last week," I said. Designflow was acquired for $170 million. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. My mother stopped chewing mid-bite. Her face was frozen in an expression of confusion, like I had spoken in a foreign language. My father picked up the envelope with trembling hands. He pulled out the Wall Street Journal article and stared at it. His face went pale. Kevin's mouth was hanging open. Meredith had turned a shade of white I had never seen on her perfectly made-up face. That I said, pointing at the article, is right there in black and white. You can read it yourself. This is not possible," my father said. His voice was barely a whisper. "You were just making websites for small businesses. I was building a company, Dad, for 7 years. While you were also busy celebrating Kevin, I was building something from nothing. 200,000 customers, 50 million in annual revenue, a platform used by small businesses in 47 countries. My mother started crying. "Why did you not tell us we could have what, Mom?" I asked. My voice was calm, but the words carried years of weight. "Listen to me. For 7 years, every time I tried to share my success, you changed the subject to Kevin. Every time I invited you to see what I had built, you had something more important to do. My 30th birthday, you chose Kevin Award. My Forbes cover. You never even saw it because I stopped sharing. What was the point?" Kevin was staring at his plate. He had not said a word. Meredith, of course, recovered first. Her survival instincts kicked in. "Brooke, that is amazing," she said, her voice suddenly warm. "Congratulations. We should celebrate. You know, my firm handles a lot of wealth management cases. I could introduce you to some wonderful financial advisors." I looked at her for a long moment. "Meredith, for 7 years, you have looked at me like I was something stuck on the bottom of your shoe. You laughed at my dreams at every family dinner. You told me I would end up moving back with my parents at 30. And now suddenly you want to be my financial advisor? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I think I will pass. Meredith's face went red. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. I turned to my parents. I did not come here to make you feel bad. I came here to show you the person I have become, the person you never bothered to see. I am not angry anymore. I let go of that anger a long time ago, but I want you to know that I built this success without your support, without your belief, without even a single kind word. My mother wiped her eyes. Brooke, we always loved you. Kevin needed more attention. His career was so demanding. I almost laughed. Mom, I started a company from nothing. I worked 18-hour days for 7 years. I did not have parents to call when I was scared or struggling. I did not have anyone to bail me out when things got hard, and I still made it. So please do not tell me Kevin needed more attention. I stood up and walked to the coat closet. I pulled out my jacket and put it on. Where are you going? My father asked. His voice cracked. It is Christmas Eve. I am going to my hotel. I have a flight to Paris tomorrow morning. I am spending New Year there, treating myself to something I have earned. I paused at the door and looked back at them. My mother was crying. My father looked old in a way I had never noticed before. Kevin still would not meet my eyes. Meredith was staring at her hands. I hope someday we can have a real relationship, I said, but that will require you to see me. Really see me. Not as Kevin's less successful little sister, as Brooke, who built something incredible from nothing. I walked out into the snow. The cold air hit my face sharp and clean. Behind me, I could hear my mother calling my name, but I did not look back. I got in my car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I could see the front door open, my parents standing there watching me leave. For the first time in my life, I was not invisible. I flew to Paris the next morning. First class because I could, because I had earned it, because I had never done anything just for myself in 34 years of living. I spent 2 weeks in Europe, Paris, Rome, Barcelona, London. I wandered through museums and ate at restaurants I could not have afforded a year ago. I sat in cafes and wrote in my journal and thought about everything that had happened. The first few days I expected to feel triumphant. I had done it. I had shown them. I had won. But that is not how I felt. Mostly I felt tired and sad and a little bit lost. I had spent so many years building Design Flow, proving myself, chasing a moment that would force my family to see me. Now that moment had come and gone, and I did not know what came next. In Paris, sitting at a cafe near the Eiffel Tower, I realized something important. I had been living for other people my whole life, first trying to earn my parents' approval, then trying to prove them wrong. Either way, they were still at the center of my story. It was time to write a new story, one where I was the center. I did not answer my phone for the first week. It rang constantly. My mother, my father, even Kevin. I let the calls go to voicemail. I was not ready to talk yet. When I finally listened to the messages, I was surprised. My mother was crying in most of them, begging me to call her back, saying how sorry she was. My father left one short message. Brooke, I failed you. I am sorry. Please come home. Kevin's message was longer, more thoughtful than I expected from him. Brooke, he said, I spent my whole life accepting things I should have questioned. The attention, the praise, the assumption that I was the important one. I never stopped to think about what that meant for you. I am sorry. I was not a good brother. I want to be better. Please give me a chance. I listened to that message 3 times. In London, I started seeing a therapist. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand. Why had I spent so long seeking approval from people who would not give it? How had I let their indifference shape my worth? What did I want my life to look like now that I had proven whatever I needed to prove? The sessions were hard. I cried a lot, but I also started to understand things I had never let myself examine. I learned that success does not heal old wounds. Money does not fill the holes left by parental neglect. Proving people wrong does not make you feel better if you are still defining yourself by their opinions. Real freedom comes from letting go, not from winning. 6 months after that Christmas, I agreed to meet my parents. We met at a coffee shop in Columbus Neutral Ground. They looked older than I remembered. My father's hands shook when he lifted his cup. My mother could not stop touching my arm like she was afraid I would disappear. We talked for 3 hours. Real talk, honest talk, painful talk. They told me things I never knew. That my father had struggled with depression for years, that he had put all his hopes on Kevin because he saw himself in him. That my mother had always felt inadequate and had compensated by focusing on the child who seemed to need her most. None of it excused what they had done. But it helped me understand. "I am sorry," my father said. The words seemed to take everything out of him. "I am sorry, I was not the father you deserved." I did not forgive them on the spot. Forgiveness is not a switch you flip. But I opened a door. I told them I was willing to try. Slowly, carefully, on my terms. Kevin came to Austin a month later. He showed up at my new house, the beach house I had bought in California, having flown across the country just to talk. "I was awful to you," he said. "I knew what was happening. I saw how they treated you. And I did nothing. Worse than nothing. I enjoyed it. The attention, the praise. I never stopped to think about what it cost you." We talked until midnight. He told me about his own struggles, the pressure of being the golden child, the constant expectation that he would be perfect, the way his entire identity had been built on achievement. "I am not saying that is the same as what you went through," he said. "I know it is not. But I want you to know that I am not who I want to be either. And I want to change." We started rebuilding our relationship from scratch. It was awkward at first. We did not know how to be siblings. We had never really learned. But we tried. Regular phone calls, visits when we could manage them, honest conversations about the past. Meredith kept her distance, which was fine by me. Some relationships are not worth rebuilding. In the year after that Christmas, I found a new purpose. I started a foundation to support women entrepreneurs, especially those from families that did not believe in them. I gave scholarships. I funded mentorship programs. I invested in startups led by women who reminded me of myself. I wrote a book about my journey, not to brag or to settle scores, but to help others who might be walking the same path, to tell them that they were not alone, that their worth was not determined by whether their families could see it. I found love, too, eventually. A man named Daniel who did not care about my money or my success. He cared about me, the real me, the one I was still learning to be. But most importantly, I found peace. I learned that success is not about proving others wrong. It is about proving yourself right. The moment I stopped seeking approval from people who were never going to give it, I became free. Family is complicated. Sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But holding on to that pain only poisons your own heart. I chose to let go. Not for them, for myself. Now sitting on the porch of my beach house watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, I can finally say that I am at peace. Not because my family finally sees me, although they are trying. Not because I proved them wrong, although I did. I am at peace because I finally see myself. And that is enough. If you are out there right now feeling invisible in your own family, feeling like nothing you do will ever be enough, I want you to know this. Your worth is not determined by how others see you. Build your dreams. Work hard. Believe in yourself even when no one else does. And one day, you will stand in your truth. You will not need anyone else's approval. That freedom, that peace, it is worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. You are enough. You always have been. I would love to hear your story too. Have you ever felt overlooked by the people who were supposed to love you most? How did you find your way through it? Share your experience in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched you, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more people find these videos. And if you are not already subscribed, click that subscribe button so you do not miss the next story. Please share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Maybe a friend who is struggling. Maybe a family member who feels invisible. Sometimes knowing you are not alone makes all the difference. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. Wishing you peace, success, and the courage to see your own worth even when others cannot. Until next time.